All right, anatomy. We're getting into our second part of the tissues chapter. Remember, you just finished up learning about epithelial tissue with all those large names like simple squamous and stratified, columnar, and all that kind of stuff. So now we're going to get into a topic where it's easier to say, but there's a great variety of tissues, okay? So hopefully you remember that the four types of tissues in the body are epithelial, connective, muscular, and nervous. So we're going to try to knock out connective, muscular, and nervous all in this set of notes. So let's look at connective tissue. The first thing to know about connective tissue, it is very, very, very diverse. Connective tissue encompasses a lot of different types, seemingly, of tissues, okay? Connective tissue is spaced further apart than epithelial tissues. The biggest thing I want you to see, and hopefully you saw it in an earlier video, was about this. The cells have an extracellular matrix between them. It's made up of several things: collagen fibers, elastic fibers, and also just kind of this ground substance, water, protein, starches. And because of this matrix, it's what gives such diversity to the connective tissues that we're going to look at. Some of it have a lot of extracellular matrix packed into these tissues. Some of them are very loose and spread out, okay? The consistency of connective tissue goes all the way from fluid, which is blood. Blood's a connective tissue, into semi-solid, which is cartilage, which you've probably heard of before. We're going to look at a little closer today. And then even bone, which is a solid substance. So the first type of connective tissue is this kind of broad category called loose connective tissue. And just as the name implies, it is very loose. There is a lot of extracellular matrix kind of blended in to these tissues where these cells are located. The function of it, it binds organs together. It holds tissue fluids. A great place to see this is pull at the skin, just the skin, not the muscle on your forearm. Okay, just the skin, maybe the top of your forearm even, and just kind of pull up on the skin and notice how it's got a little bit of give to it. As we'll learn more about the skin, you'll see the skin is not very thick, the skin itself, but this loose connective tissue underneath is very elastic, right? It's very elastic. It's able to be pulled apart. I think about it almost like filling in the gaps of our body. Okay, it's what all the organs, yes, here's our stomach and here's our intestines, but what's all around those? What's keeping them in place? Loose connective tissue most of the time. And loose connective tissue is very well nourished with blood vessels, meaning that it heals very quickly. The more blood reaches to an area, the quicker it heals. That's a good rule to always remember. The next category shows us a very different picture of connective tissue. It's dense connective tissue. This also binds organs together, but in certain places. When we look at it, deep layers of skin, yes, but also tendons and ligaments. These hold muscle to bone, and then also bone to bone. One of my big things I want you to know when you get out of my class, there's about 5 of them, I'm just like, I really, really want you to know this, is the difference in tendons and ligaments. Because we oftentimes face injuries in these tissues, but people get them very confused. A tendon attaches muscle to bone, okay? A ligament attaches bone to bone. I think about it as ligament starts with an L. It holds like, which also starts with an L, substances together, like bone to bone, okay? Tendons do different, muscle to bone. So if I tore the ACL, which the L stands for ligament, in my knee, I have torn a ligament. Now, both of these dense connective tissues are very slow to repair because of the poor blood supply to them. We saw in loose, it's got a very rich blood supply, so it heals quickly. Here, they heal very, very slowly. Sometimes they won't even heal themselves. That's why you might have to have some kind of operation to suture these back together, tendons and ligaments. Another type of connective tissue, a lot of people don't realize this, is something called adipose tissue. This is fat. This is the fat that we have in our bodies. It protects, it insulates, keeping us warm. The big job that we oftentimes know about is it stores energy. That's what fat is. It's stored energy. And it also cushions. Going back to that stored energy, it's true. If you put somebody that was a little overweight and somebody that was a little underweight on an island and didn't have food, by and large, the bigger person's going to live longer because they have stored up energy inside of them that their body will devour or use for bodily functions, continuing to live, that the skinnier person may not live not have to live. We see it in lots of different places in the body. Before you make a joke about, oh, my belly or, my thighs or whatever, it's beneath the skin, pretty much all these places. Now, some people do hold adipose tissue in places that other people don't. So it's also around kidneys and joints, behind the eyes, believe it or not, and can be on the surface of the heart. There's a condition called fatty heart, which is really true. Somebody that is obese might face this, a fatty heart. It can not be good for the heart muscles there. And abdominal membrane, so there's where you get a little belly fat. Adipocytes are fat cells, and these cells are interesting in that they don't like multiply when we're doing more of them. They actually start getting bigger. They swell up. Think of like a bubble. You're blowing a bubble. Let's say like or how about a balloon? You blow up a balloon. It's small at first. You put a little more air into it. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. That's how adipocytes work. Instead of multiplying to make more adipose tissue, the adipocytes actually continue to grow. So they get a little bigger and they store up the calories inside of them. Average adult, 40 to 50 billion, that's what it'll be, fat cells in their body. All right, so looking at the next type of connective tissue, this one has multiple subcategories, if you want to think of it like that. Cartilage. There's a lot of collagen fibers. We talked about the extracellular matrix a little bit right in that first slide. Cartilage has a lot of collagen in it. The first type of cartilage that we're going to look at is hyaline cartilage. Hyaline. You might have heard of hyaline glass before, maybe if you like antiques or around, your grandparents or parents, and they talk about it. Hyaline glass is very sought after because it's kind of see-through. It's translucent. That it's clear, but you can't really see through. It's almost like foggy. And that's a great name for hyaline cartilage because it looks the same way. It's kind of see-through, but kind of not. It supports, protects, provides framework. And look at the places we see this, and you'll see how this framework kind of works. The nose, the bridge of your nose, you can push in on it, and it's got a little squish to it. That's because it's hyaline cartilage. It's not full bone or anything like that. It's connective tissue, yes, but it's got more collagen in it. The ends of bones, and also the rings of the respiratory passage is what holds our trachea open, our windpipe open, so it doesn't get squished in half or get cut off very easily. This cartilage is a little thicker, a little dense. Cartilage cells are called chondrocytes. Chondrocytes. You might be picking up onto this suffix cytes, like adipocytes or chondrocytes. It means cells. Anytime that you see cytes at the end of a word, you can already equate this is a type of cell. Okay, chondrocytes are cartilage cells. Second type of cartilage I want to see is elastic cartilage, and the name is very fitting. It protects, supports, but also provides some flexibility. Think about your ear. Take your hand and kind of bend it over. See how elastic it is. Some people is more than others. You cannot take the tip of your nose and completely bend it back to your cheekbone, right? If you did, it would hurt a lot. Because it's a different type of cartilage. The ones in your ear, the elastic cartilage in your ear provides that flexibility, whereas hyaline does not. Fibrocartilage, it absorbs shock. That's what it's really for. Think about like shock absorbers on a car. If you've ever driven in a really crappy car, which I have, I've had plenty of them, that the shocks don't work very good. It's a rough ride. Right, anytime you go over a bump or go down a dirt road, man, you're just bouncing all around. But then if you get in a really nice car with good shock absorbers, it's a very smooth ride, even though you're going through the same potholes. This is what fibrocartilage supplies and does for our bones, the ends of our bones. Specifically, the pelvic girdle, our pelvis, our hips, our knees, and also between our vertebrae. So that when we jump up in the air and land, it doesn't just crack all of our bones in those key places. It absorbs the shock in this fibrocartilage. All right, so we've looked at several different types of connective tissue, right? We've looked at loose, dense, cartilage, and now let's look at our adipose, and then cartilage, and now let's look at bone. Bone, we're going to spend a whole chapter talking about, so I don't want us to get too deep into it, but we can look a little bit. It is a type of connective tissue. Its main job is to provide a framework. Our entire body holds onto this framework. As we'll see, muscles work very close to that too. It is the most rigid connective tissue, and this is because of the calcium carbonate and calcium phosphate between the cells of these bones. You've heard it, drink your milk, calcium will make your bones stronger. We need calcium. Now, a lot of times we get an excess amount of it, and it doesn't make our bones any really stronger, but we do have enough to keep them strong. Osteocytes, there's sites again as a suffix. Osteo always means bone, so this means bone cells. Blood is another type of connective tissue. Think about how it connects the whole body together. It flows to all basically parts of the body, and it carries oxygen to it, and also carries some other things that we'll learn about when we get to the cardiovascular system. It maintains a stable internal environment. If we don't have blood go into an area, it will die. Blood is composed of a substance called plasma. It's a very liquid substance. It's primarily made of water. Then some formed elements, as they're called. And this is the solid parts of blood. Red blood cells, which carry oxygen, white blood cells, which aid in immunity, and platelets, which help injuries heal. It causes scabs. It grabs onto stuff. We'll look at this a little more with the cardiovascular system. All right, let's talk about away from connective tissue now. That was all the connective tissue, and this is the third type of tissue that we find in the body. It's muscle, and we're going to spend a whole unit talking about the muscular system, but I want to briefly talk about it. 3 types of muscle tissue. There's skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. Skeletal muscle is the muscles that attach skeletal muscles are attached to bone. Okay, it's the bones we control, the muscles we control. That's where voluntary comes in here. Think about if you flex and show your bicep, you are able to voluntarily, consciously control that muscle, right? And skeletal muscles are a huge part of our body. 40% of our body is found in skeletal muscles. Mine's a little more because I'm so ripped. That's right. Smooth muscle is involuntary. It can't be controlled by conscious effort. This is like the muscle that carries food through our digestive system. We don't have to eat our breakfast burrito and then think about moving it to our stomach later and then contracting muscles voluntarily and going, yeah, let's move that into our intestines now. It all does it on its own. These smooth muscles are found in your digestive system, your urinary bladder, your blood vessels. We'll look at these a little more in depth when we get to it. But the big thing I want you to know now is involuntary. They can't be controlled by conscious effort. And the last type of muscle is cardiac. And that name implies it's found only in the heart. Okay, it's only in the heart. And it's also involuntary. We don't have to sit there and think about, come on, heart, beat now, beat now, beat now, because it does it on its own. That's thanks to cardiac muscle. So the fourth and final type of tissue, we've talked about epithelial, connective, and muscular. And now it's nervous tissue. Nervous tissue, and we're going to spend a whole unit talking about the nervous system, so I promise we'll get more in depth. But nervous tissue is found in the brain, spinal cord, and then the peripheral nerves, the ones that branch out from the spinal column. Nerve cells are called neurons. We're going to look at that in the next slide. Neurons, okay? But there's also called these neuroglial cells that support the neurons. The neurons are the ones that carry a signal from the body. It's what my brain says, tap your foot, and it sends a signal all the way down to all those muscles in my leg that enables me to tap my foot. Okay, neurons are also the things when I see something, I see it with my eyes, it sends a signal to my brain, that's somebody I know. And then sends a signal down to my arm, wave at them, right? So neurons are the ones that do the job. Neuroglial cells are like support cells. They hold neurons in place and also do a few other things. This is a neuron. This is a neuron. It's got this large head where the nucleus is. This is the large head of it. We'll learn about this in the nervous system. And then it's got this long tail. Every neuron in our body looks similar to this one. Sometimes they may have a double axon, but this is a great standardized picture of what a neuron looks like. So, quick review, because I got about 30 seconds left. 4 different types of tissue: epithelial, which we learned in our last video, and then today we learned about connective, muscular, and nervous. Now, we did spend a bulk of our time talking about the different types of connective tissue, right? Loose, dense, adipose, which is fat. Then we talked about cartilage and all the different types of cartilage. We talked about bone, and we also talked about blood. And I may have been leaving one out, but I don't think I did. So anyway, I use this to complete your student notes, and then obviously we're going to have some quizzes and things that have to do with this, and then we have an exam on it, maybe in a week or so.